Welcome to another episode of Angels, Positivity, and Love. I'm your host, Michael Andre Ford in Texas. If you remember, I'm the guy who helps you actually have a direct experience with angels, other loving figures. You do it all, listening, feeling, seeing. Speaking of which, we've got Malcolm Stern from England, from Devon, west side of England. He's a co-founder of Alternatives UK, an author, also psychotherapist for 30 plus years. He's done it in terms of groups and individually, obviously. He's helped a lot of folks over time. His book is all about compassion. It's really getting out of here, getting into your heart, and exploring your truths and ability to breathe easier and basically to settle in and enjoy the ride in life. I'd like to welcome Malcolm to the show, and thank you very much for being on.
Thank you, Michael.
Malcolm, you've seen a lot, done a lot, basically been there and done it in terms of a lot of the other self-help, spiritual, compassion experts out there, whether we're talking mindfulness, meditation, and so on. You've also had a tremendous practice for decades, again, for yourself first, so you could be able to help others. Can you talk to us about one time that was instrumental in helping you either discover this path or to stay on it or to help you with your expansion in helping others?
Yeah. Well, funnily enough, I was just sort of talking about this yesterday, so it's something that arose for me, and it was when my daughter Melissa, who now sadly has passed, was born, and it was meant to be a really sort of beautiful birth with sort of healers and acupuncturists and all, and it ended up being a cesarean, and we didn't know if she would survive. And I remember the nurses putting her into my arms as she was born, and there was this beautiful little being, and I opened my arms up and I started to well up with tears, and something in me went, oh my God, I'm in with a load of strangers, and I blocked it and shut it down. And I made a resolve that day that I would allow my tears to flow when they were wanting to come through. And that's been a really great practice for me. When my dad died and I gave the eulogy, I cried my way through it, and that was perfect. It was the truth. It was authentic. And so I feel like I got educated in that moment about allowing our emotions to not be something we're frightened of. And it's colored, of course, it's colored my work, that I'm not frightened of other people's emotions either. So when big stuff comes up, I'm able to stand in the face of it because I'm willing to stand in the face of my own emotions.
Oh, that's beautiful. I mean, you're all about, your mantra would be find the heart, access the truth, if I had to just put it succinctly. And I'll add with lots of compassion, gentleness, and kindness, both to yourself and others.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, your book is, and I'm going to get this correct in terms of the title, but it's Slay Your Dragons with Compassion by Watkins 2020. You've got Jack Kornfield, Eckhart Tolle, Elizabeth Gilbert doing endorsements on the cover. And here is that book cover with a little bit of glare. My apologies for folks, but you can find it on Amazon. The link will be below the video. And can you tell us a little bit about the book? How long had you been working on it for, and what kicked it all off?
Well, when Melissa took her own life, my daughter Melissa, she was 33 years old in 2014. And I realized I'd developed quite a lot of resources to deal with that. So I was around other people who'd lost children or lost loved ones, and they were really not able to cope. And I found that actually I could cope, but I wanted to do more than cope. I wanted to actually do something with this feeling. And it took till 2018 to then sort of find my friend Ben and say, do you want to help me write my book? And he did. And so he was like a ghostwriter, because I'm good verbally, but I'm not so good on the page. But we worked really well together. And originally the book was about how to survive as an empath, because Melissa was very empathic, and so am I. And so are you, Michael, as well. I can see that it's clearly true. But actually, it took about 18 months to make the architecture of the book. But once I found the architecture, what I wanted to say, what was the point I wanted to put across, it took only 7 months to write it, and that is nothing. It normally takes me 4 years to write a book. And it just flowed out of me. So I just felt like I wanted to honor my daughter. I wanted to honor my own experiences, and I wanted to help educate people who were going through suffering, how I dealt with suffering, and what it could be. So that's basically what the book's about: how to have compassion for yourself, for others, how to practice the very things that we need to become more than the sort of the sort of like the, oh, it's too difficult humans we can be.
Well, let's honor Ben Craib, Craib, your
Yeah,
co-author. If he wants to come on in 2025, he'll get in touch. I'll look him up and check that out as well and extend an
that'd
invite.
be great. He's a lovely, lovely man, young man. He's in his, he's probably in his early 40s now, his late 30s, early 40s, but he's got such a gift. And at some stage I said to him, our book. He said, no, it's not our book. It's your book. I'm helping you write your book. And I really appreciated that he found my words and was able to put them down in really good English.
And he might be empathic too.
He's definitely very empathic. Very empathic, yes.
Okay. Can you tell us, I mean, without prying, and don't share what you don't want to share, obviously,
There's
and
nothing I don't want to share, so you're cool.
your daughter, has she come to you in your dreams?
Well, yeah, I don't know if I told you this last time that I was with you. So I was longing to have a dream about Melissa. And after 6 months, I finally had a dream that I found out where she was. And I telephoned the place where she was. And this woman answered the phone. I said, "Is Melissa there?" She said, "Just a minute, I'll go and get her." And then Melissa came to the phone with this very flat voice. Melissa had been a very vibrant person, but then she went through this terrible depression and before she took her life. And she said, "Hello, Mum." I said, "It's not Mum, it's Dad." And she hung the phone up. And that was the only dream for 2 years that I had of Melissa. But then 18 months later, so 2 years has gone by, and I'm in Thailand, and I had a dream about Melissa, and I dreamt that she was at a party, and I came to this party, and her mother, who was not my ex-wife, but Melissa was the result of a shortish relationship. Her mother was standing in the way of the door, and that had always been how our relationship was. That I felt like her mother was in the way of my relationship with her, but somehow I ghosted past her mother and saw Melissa in the, not in the terrible distance, but in the near distance. And she shot me this radiant smile. She was dressed in bright clothes. She was happy. She was absolutely beautiful and vibrant again. And we didn't talk, but there was a love connection that got passed through us. Now, here's the really weird bit of the story, Michael. So I telephoned later that day. I telephoned my daughter Alex, who's her half sister, and I said, "You won't believe this. I had this amazing dream." She said, "Dad, I had the same dream last night as well." I mean, how does that happen?
Oh, I love it. Hey, the universe is really big. Let's get on the checklist. So I already kind of coughed up the first one, which is the universe really big? Very big. Okay.
Immense and yes, yeah.
Do angels exist? Do you want to hazard a guess?
I would say that there are angelic forces, and yes, whether they are the beings of Michael, Raphael, all of that, I don't know. But what I do know is that sometimes there are forces beyond our sort of logical comprehension that guide us. And so I would actually say yes, define your terms with angels, but actually something exists beyond our everyday reality.
Well, and I'll try it this way. How about time, limits, judgment, conditions? And I probably duplicated something there. But down here, timelessness, no limits, unconditional love, and all the sparkly moments that are actually cool and fun. If you get a life review later, this is what you're going to want to remember the most. And this stuff, it's extra. Is that pretty accurate?
That's pretty accurate. I sometimes, I can lie in bed, and very occasionally this happens, and only happens for a very brief period of time. I realize that I am a vessel, but who I am is not this person, is not Malcolm Stern, is a vessel in which consciousness is being inhabited for this period of time. And I am the universe, the life force, all of it. And finally, I was doing a meditation online the other, a Ram Dass meditation on mindfulness, and it was very much about that. It was getting in touch with that aspect that sees we're more than this body.
Ooh, okay. Talk to us about meditation, mindfulness, how it's all helpful to get to here, because we do our darndest for sometimes decades at a time, months, years, even lifetimes, to avoid getting back to here. You were here as a kid, but then adulting kicked in, trauma, something. Can you just discuss the human nature? These are like the eternal questions. So I'm not handing you a very big question at all here. But can you talk to us about this dynamic of, letting go, being versus I don't know,
I
more
think
being by doing.
yeah, I think if we can find stillness in ourselves, then we can start to see the nature of reality. And we are deluded to the nature of reality by everything we've been conditioned by. And so I am realize that my meditation practice is very much about slowing myself down to the level where I'm in tune with something bigger than my own consciousness or my own perceived consciousness. And um, and so for me, that's a very beautiful practice. Recently, I've started doing breathwork, pranayama meditations in the morning, and I do about 20 minutes of deep breathing and holding breath and stuff like that. And all of these things tend to slow me and bring me more into alignment with who I believe I am, rather than who I think I am.
Mm.
I know I am rather than who I think I am.
Okay, so what's your reminder for folks? Remember, you had 10 practices that you pitch or suggest for folks in your book, Slaying Your Dragon with Compassion, or Slaying Your Dragons with Compassion. Can you give us one of those tips and tie it into, it's a daily opportunity for all of us?
Yeah, I would say that there's the practice of authenticity, of noticing when we feel like we are saying to the other what that we think they want us to hear, or we're saying to the other what we think will make us look good. And actually, there's a beautiful practice which is actually about showing up in who you really are and allowing yourself to speak your truth. And when that truth comes through in that way, there's no, I know when I'm hit the target. I know when I'm speaking and I'm landing in the right zone on the archery board.
Oh, let me get a cigar and a whiskey and I'll be right back.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, except that stuff's too strong. Okay.
Yeah.
Again, we're all on a unique life journey, and we've got that there, whether we know it or not. That's my personal belief. That's also what angels have said for the last 12 years. Um, the universe is here to remind us of that this exists, and there's something more than what we often think is happening up here. It's why we get stuck, trauma, PTSD, all this other stuff. Can you again talk to us or remind us about the dynamic and that there's always a bigger path ahead or within?
I think that's really important, is to keep the perspective that we are bigger than this. So we can get weighed down with our everyday problems and we can feel like life is too difficult. But actually, if we can sort of find our way towards practicing, one of the things that I've suggested in my book is we have a real, in the I Ching, it talks about until we reach a certain stage in our evolution, not only do we have the need for the support of others of like mind, we have a duty to seek that support. Thank you for flashing my book off. That's great.
I got to do it.
Yeah, great stuff. Yeah, and that's amazing. It's like actually, we need community around us. We need to be with others of like mind. I have regular sort of sangha. I have regular connection with people, which is about speaking what's real. And I need to keep that practice to keep myself. It's a bit like a pencil sharpener. You've got to keep the pencil, the lead sharp so that it can write well. And so I'm very aware of that need to connect with other people who are on the path, who are fellow pilgrims, I see it, as on planet Earth, not out to sort of make a fortune or do the things they think will bring them happiness and will bring you temporary happiness, but to find the places inside us where we feel like we are lit up with the light of the divine.
Beautiful. Okay, Alternatives UK is, I'll do the best I can. Piccadilly Circus Church. It's been 30 plus years. It's the leading mind, body, health, etc., spirituality organization. I believe, if I got this right, Steve Noble and yourself were primary co-founders, have been involved for a long time, but I think you've both stepped back. A lot of the it's like an Omega Institute, but without the massive building or property. It's definitely a destination for the likes of an Elizabeth Gilbert or Dan Millman, or many of the other figures we've seen over the last 30 years who fill up the wellness, spiritual, holistic landscape, authors, experts, and so on. Can you tell us more about Alternatives UK? Amazing website, really well designed, and it's been that way for a long time. What can people expect to find there today? What did you find so interesting about it at the beginning and then the middle of the journey, and then time demands and everything else? I think you've moved on for lots of good reasons.
Yeah. Well, now I live in Devon and I was living in London. So when I founded the Alternatives, it was 1982, and I was part of Pir Vilayat Khan, the Sufi leader, put on a play called The Cosmic Celebration. And as far as I knew, we were just in a venue in London doing this play called The Cosmic Celebration. And interestingly, I played an angel in this Cosmic Celebration. So I was there to dance as an angel. It was the story of all the master saints and prophets and angels throughout our history and what we were. And there was this venue, which was St. James's Church in Piccadilly, which was Sir Christopher Wren's favorite church. So this is a very beautiful church, which is, exquisite, fantastic sort of stained glass and high ceiling, all of that sort of stuff. And at the end of this cosmic celebration, which was amazing, Donald Reeves, who was the rector of the church at that time, said every church in the land should have a cosmic celebration. I thought, wow, what a switched on priest this is. So I went to chat to him afterwards and I said, would you be interested in having a series here that is about the sort of themes that came up in the cosmic celebration? He said, absolutely. He said, I've written a paper which has got my vision for St. James's in the future. And one of it is to explore the New Age, which was then called New Age Ideas. So we started doing little talks here, there, and everywhere, and normally on a Monday night, because that was the night we felt that most people didn't have something else to do. And we used to be in the Wren Cafe, which was part of the church. And then after we've been going 2 or 3 years, and we've sort of built up gradually and getting audiences 50, 60, sometimes 80, I met up with Roger Housden, who's a poet. You might know him actually. He's on the circuit now still these days as a poet. And he formed the Open Gate Trust, where he brought across all the major American players and was putting on workshops for them. And we did a deal where we would do the taster for the workshop. So we'd do an evening with them. So we had people like Ram Dass, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, Thich Nhat Hanh, a lot of extraordinary people. And they were all coming across to England and wanting to play with the English environment. And so we started to have these really big talks, and sometimes we're getting audiences of 500, but the church can hold 500 as well. And then we started to sort of like reach out even bigger and sort of go, well, I think we could hire other places and see what else we do. So, in 2019, we put on Eckhart Tolle, and at the Albert Hall, the Royal Albert Hall, and filled it. So it's like we've experimented for pretty much over the years. My concept at the beginning was that this would be a place where it wasn't just the speaker and the audience, but there would be created a field where there would be an exchange between speaker and audience, where we would actually be examining the subject together rather than having the expert and the sponges. And that's how it panned out. It has changed quite a lot now, and Steve's no longer involved with it now. Steve was involved quite early on with me as well. Interesting enough, Steve and I share the same girlfriend as well, so that's also not at the same time, but it's we had some interesting sort of parallels. And now it sort of feels like it's taken a different slant now, and I think it's very much about empowerment, and probably more mystical than I would necessarily have gone myself. But it's still an amazing place in London, and it's a place where people feel like there is community, or there is sangha, there is a sense of being with others of like mind. And so I think it's still shining the light for that, and still holding that space.
And thank you very much for that. It definitely is an institution as far as spots around the globe go, where people can find instruction, encouragement, spirituality, and so on. Can you talk to us about Buddhism, India, different traditions around the globe? Where have you traveled? What have you enjoyed? You just mentioned Sangha. I mispronounce almost every term, but I can still do it. It doesn't help me necessarily when I run to a certain community and I'm like, hey, do you want to meet angels? Oftentimes I get, go away, we're looking for angels. Or if it's the Buddhist community, and I'm like, do you want to meet Buddha, Thich Nhat Hanh? They're like, go away. We love
Yes.
Buddha. It's just the way it is. And then the same people sometimes are really nice later and they do everything. I never know. So I've got to keep it very light and easy to survive in this business.
Yes.
No judging if you can help it. Okay. You've traveled a lot. Have you been to India?
Yeah, I've been to India. I've been a number of times to India.
What was your experience there?
I've gone on spiritual searches. I did an Ayurvedic retreat in India. I spent some time in ashrams in India, and just but basically so drinking in the environment. And my experience is that East and West are so different. We are being there's easy to sort of glorify the East and go, that's where it's all at. But actually, that's got its shadow side as well.
Hmm.
But there is something about the spirituality of the East. And I remember being somewhere in India and seeing such poverty, but also such joy. And it was like people had nothing, but yet they had something inside themselves that was joyful. So I spent some time in India. I spent quite a lot of time studying Buddhism. Now, I had a very, very interesting experience how Buddhism first came to me, actually. I was an estate agent at the time in my 20s. And one day, my boss's girlfriend, my boss was a bit of a wild character, and he would have go to orgies and all sorts of strange things. His girlfriend, who was incredibly beautiful, came into the office and said to me, um, I've lost my dog. If you find him, give me a ring, and gave me her phone number. The next day she came and said, you didn't ring me. I said, well, I didn't find your dog. She said, right, give me your number. And she called me. And anyway, we started having this bit of canoodling together over the next few weeks. And then she invited me round to her house. Um, and um, and so she made me dinner. And she sort of like then showed me a whole range of costumes and whips and all sorts of things and said, what would you like me to wear? I said, well, whatever you like. And it's like, I felt quite overwhelmed. Anyway, we sort of ended up going to bed together. And then afterwards, I saw her, and this very beautiful woman and I hadn't been taking drugs or drink, by the way, just to say at this stage, her face was superimposed with the face of the devil. Horns, jowls, the whole work, beard, was all superimposed on her face. And I was going, what the hell is going on here? And I left. I tried to get away for a long time. She wouldn't let me go. And finally, I managed to break free and leave. And I was totally freaked out by that. Now, that next day, this is the extraordinary thing of synchronicity. That very next day, I saw this monk walking down the street. And I said to him, are you a Hare Krishna? He said, no, I'm a Buddhist monk. He said, I think you should come and see me. I have a place just down the road where I live. So come and see me. So I went to see him, and that started a practice of about 5 years of studying Buddhism with this Buddhist monk, who was a very profound man and was really helped me to understand that I had seen beyond the veils of normal consciousness, and that actually something was calling me to wake up and not to get hooked on the fear of or whatever the devil might be, but just to recognize that actually there was more to life than met the eye. And that started a real process going. And I spent quite a lot of time after that with Ram Dass, who was an extraordinary man. I organized 3 workshops for him in the UK, and we became quite good friends. And we both shared how we'd written off our Jaguars and stuff like that. But there was a sort of sense that I've been very fortunate to come across some really great teachers. I also spent time meditating with a woman called Irina Tweedy, who wrote a book called The Chasm of Fire. Now, in her 80s, she was initiated by her Sufi master and came back as a teacher in her 80s. And there used to be regular meditation sessions at her house on a Friday evening. Basically, you'd lie on the floor and you'd have visions. And I took that as normal. I was sort of in my early 20s or whatever it was, and took as normal that I was having visions, and so was everyone else there. And so this amazing environment happened. So there's all this stuff that's showing me that life is bigger. Then I found Pir Vilayat Khan, the Sufi leader, who was the son of Hazrat Vilayat Khan, who was one of the great Sufis. And in fact, my children, they've all disowned the name now, were given the middle name Inayat with their names. So yeah, so I sort of feel like I've been very fortunate to be in the presence of some great beings. Also, Eckhart Tolle used to be in the audience at St. James's in the 1980s. He was one of the regular people who turned up to come along. He was a bit of a bum, and but we sort of like used to nod and sort of have a quick chat with each other. But he found something extraordinary. So I think I've been very fortunate to be touched by greatness and have it around me and show up. I did some workshops with Thich Nhat Hanh as well. So I've been immersed in being around good people. And I don't know if you know Thomas Hubel. Have you come across him?
Yes, I've actually spoken with him. I've invited him on the show, and I've taken some steps with him too. Wonderful fellow. Again, a lot of folks don't know what to do with me right afterwards. So sometimes it'll be years before I get to reconnect, or if ever. But
Yes.
the seed's been planted. But so he's wonderful, and I kept looking for. There's a Sufi book that I own that's incredible stories of angels, because angels figure very
Yeah, they
prominently
do.
in
Yeah.
Sufism, but beautiful stories of just unbelievable help from angels. Even in the middle of civil war in Lebanon, I still remember that story. Driving from the airport, there are roadblocks, and if they get caught, they're executed. End of story. There's a huge civil war going on, and the little girl in the car says, "Hey, I see angels all around the car," and it's as if time slowed down. And angels just pushed the car through the checkpoint, and they got through
Yes.
without getting stopped. It would have been execution for everybody in the car.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But
Amazing.
it's sitting up there somewhere. It's just the most beautiful book. I don't know if this word's correct, but revered it for the last
Oh
decade.
yeah.
It's been just an incredible find. I think the book found me at a bookstore, and I liked it. Okay. What else can you share about how everything is energy or flows? And if you simply are willing to get out of here to pay attention, it gets pretty easy after that.
I think the secret is slowing down. That's for me, that's been my secret anyway. I've been always very speedy. And the secret is to actually slow down and to allow yourself to be touched by, I would say, the hand of God, and it's like that's and I tend not to use the word God very much, or even the word angels very much.
Yep.
Uh, but I do feel like there is a divine force. And actually, if we find ways to connect with that, if we use incense, candles, meditation, sangha. We use all sorts of things to actually tune ourselves in to something beyond the everyday. Then there's a sense that we are guided. And I always feel like my life has been guided. Even in the times of great darkness, there's guidance.
I'm going to read a couple quotes to you periodically and let you either react to it, add to it, espouse. Um, Here's one from Seth, talk about New Age, 1970s, light being. Uh, just said that the answers to the nature of reality, the intimate knowledge of all that is, that you all seek, all of us, is within your present experience. It will not be found outside of yourselves, but through an inner journey into yourself, through yourself, and the world that you know. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, he's obviously, as you know, he's obviously tuned into that. It resonates for me. I think that there's been so many years where I've looked outside of myself, and I've now recognized that actually it is all within. However, it's quite an intricate journey, and it's not like suddenly you wake up one day. And I think there's a danger actually in trying to awaken that too quickly. So when we take psychedelic substances, and we can very easily get in touch with it. And I did take psychedelic substances in my youth, um, and a few times over the years, and they definitely put me in touch with exactly what Seth said. But you can't hang on to that, and you've got to in my experience, you've got to earn it, or it's got to come to you through grace. I think if you try and force it, you can blow your mind, literally blow your mind apart.
Okay. And I love that. Thank you. Okay. A true healer kindles the power already within another.
Yeah. So what we find a lot these days in sort of consciousness teachings and consciousness raising workshops and dialogues and all this sort of stuff it's almost like Robert Johnson, who wrote the He, She, We books and all of those things. And he'd be a wonderful guest, but he's dead now. But you might be able to bring him through on the angelic planes. He talked about giving away our gold. That very often teachers will take our gold, so they'll use us to glorify themselves. And I think a true healer, a true teacher, a true someone who is going to penetrate to the depths is going to allow you to find the place inside you rather than giving it to him or her.
Okay, now I'll give you a choice on door number one. I'll get you another quote. Or door number two, I'll put up a photo of an angel. It'll be Joy, the pink ball of light. We've done this a bunch of times before off camera, if you don't mind me saying that. And she'll give you a topic to run with. It could be about joy, it could be whatever. You'll do the listening. Folks at home can put their hand out, feel, or vibe. Do you want another quote, or do you want Joy just yet?
I'll take Joy.
Okay. Here she is. If people at home want to catch a flower smell, catch sage, but nothing's getting lit, no limits means no limits when you're in your heart. Good luck believing it up here, but that's a chance to witness your own ego in action, saying but or no way, Jose. Limits, no limits, fun, Not so fun.
Okay.
Okay, Malcolm, what do you got for us?
Well, the first thing that came to me was this lovely little poem by Rabindranath Tagore. It said, I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I woke and found that life was service. I acted and behold, service was joy. And what I've got for you around joy is that I know when I'm doing my thing, as you'll be doing your thing, Michael, as well, I find there is such joy in being used as a vessel to bring through the larger field of divinity, of our true humanity.
I have goosebumps, like the energy here, but goosebumps going all the way down to my arms and hands on both sides. But you gave me another quote, which then we'll go to another photo. And I want to offer the opportunity for Thich Nhat Hanh, Ram Dass. Ram Dass, I've just been able to start doing, thanks to somebody in Hawaii who used to swim with him. So long story short, you will get those photos in a little bit. And this is a classic Indian expression. A mind that is fast is sick. A mind that is slow is sound. A mind that is still is divine.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful.
And so, can you give us again a reminder about how we think everything could be okay or blase or so, and what we're willing to compromise and live with that? But there's something about if it's a Ferrari, we can get out of seventh gear and try to get it back down to first, or even maybe park it and maybe even step out of the Ferrari, the mind Ferrari.
Yeah. I'm reminded of Leonard Cohen's song Slow. I've always liked it slow. I've never liked it fast. It's not because I'm old. It's not what dying does. I've always liked it slow. Slow is in my blood. And there's something about, sometimes I'll hear people like Leonard Cohen or people like Ram Dass who would speak slowly, but not in an affected, now I'm going to tell you about the universe. It's not like that. There's sort of something about daring to be spacious around what we're bringing through. So I've experienced slowness and only minimally experienced stillness. So I haven't got enough cred to give you the great stuff on stillness, but I do know that I've touched moments of stillness. And one of my biggest moments was when I had a heart attack in 2021, and I'm lying in the ambulance thinking I'm going to die. I'm in immense pain. They're giving me morphine. And all of a sudden, I realized I'd written my legacy book. I was at peace with the world. And if I died, then I died. And it would have been sad to go at that stage, but there was a sort of a sense of peace in the stillness. Now, I said to someone afterwards, well, maybe it's because I was on the morphine. They said, no, other people have been on morphine and wouldn't have had the same experience. You had a genuine experience. Perhaps the morphine was the catalyst. And it was a genuine experience, an experience of actually, in that moment, I was utterly still. And those moments are precious, but for me, they're rare. I think for people like Eckhart Tolle, they're not particularly rare. And I know for Ram Dass, I don't think it was particularly rare either.
Mm. Okay. Can you describe Eckhart Tolle for us from if you were doing a museum tour and he's a museum? Sorry, Eckhart, if you're watching this, but this is the only way I know how to phrase the question. I know you're still breathing alive, doing your thing. But can you give us a sense for what his presence is? And I'll take a stab at it first if I could. If you
Please.
get him a whiskey glass and a cigar, he could do stand-up comedy perfectly. He has that little laugh, very unique. He's got a way of delivery that just disarms you. There will be people who take issue with something, but that's just resistance. And we do resistance all day long. The second we get out of here, it's go with the flow. And he's very much go with the flow. Okay, Malcolm, you've met him. I'm taking a shot in the dark. You're not.
No, I think one of the things I'm aware, I think one of the times when I was with Alternatives, and all of us went to have tea with him at the Savoy Hotel, which is a beautiful hotel in London, and we were with him for about 3 hours, and during that time, there was the sense that he gave everybody his attention. It's like, it's often been spoken about Bill Clinton, that if you're in a room with him, you'll feel like you're the most important person in the world. He had that capacity to make people feel like they were really something. And I think Eckhart has that same capacity of actually, there's no one who's excluded from his embrace. That laugh is amazing. He reminds me a bit of, excuse me, Eckhart, if you ever hear this, it reminds me a bit of Alfred E. Newman on the Mad magazine covers. That there's something, it's almost like it's almost like a trickery, that it's like he's not naturally charismatic. In fact, you wouldn't look at him and go, wow, there's a charismatic, gorgeous guy. But yet there's something in him that's very deep, that has transcended, I think, normal human realms. It's very important that with all of the speakers I put on at Alternatives, that they don't get deified, because it's very easy to see the great presentation and think, here's this extraordinary human being. They're much bigger than I could ever be. Actually, we're all human, and I see all of the human experiences with all of its foibles as well. But there's something about Eckhart that has great humility, that is beautifully kind, that is incredibly spacious, and that's very relational. There's a sense that if you're with him, you're with him, and he's not looking to rush on to the next thing. He's available for that.
Hmm. Okay, A New Earth. It's sitting up there on the shelf somewhere. I think it's right in here. There's 2 copies. That is a wonderful book. All his books are wonderful, but I recommend for anybody having difficulty falling asleep at night, just read a paragraph or two. Your ego will have to make a difficult decision. You're about to get the best bed and breakfast rest you've ever had. You'll sleep like a baby. You'll go from not sleeping at night. It's been 30 days. You're seeing doctors, psychotherapists, you're on medication. Go ahead and try to read that book, and 3 paragraphs, you'll be out like a light, because the ego, the psyche, the part of you that resists, that knows something, but that precludes possibility, will say, we cannot read that book. And who's the we? Let him answer all that in his books. The point is, there's a decision. What's that? A catch-22, but there's another way to say that. The decision will be made to let you get to sleep at night, no problemo, because to read that is almost like universal love language or angelic writing or whatever you want to call it, consciousness.
Lovely.
And yeah, it's like garlic to a vampire. So the ego is like, hey, I want nothing to do with that book. I'm fine now with letting you sleep.
Well, funnily enough, I used to use, when I couldn't, there was a long period where I couldn't sleep. It was a couple of months where I had really had problem getting to sleep, staying asleep. Well, and one of the resources I used was I would put on Eckhart's tapes and listen to his voice, and his voice would lull me to sleep, but very quickly. Usually, there was a sort of sense that he didn't need to create excitement. He's not an adrenaline pumper. You'll see some people like Osho was one of the greatest showmen on earth. You know, he would really create great drama and there's something about Eckhart that's very, very, it stays level, but at some level he catches you in his levelness and you fall into the field with him.
Yeah, there's a little bit of harmony with him. There's a flow in the air. And that is such a great point about I have that book on those audio CDs that when you put it in the car, you're forced to listen to it, which is fantastic. If you've got a lot of traffic in a big city, what a wonderful way to go. At some point, you're caught by his disarming, nonchalant nature. Find out, again, the best word, but he has a way of catching you. And when you do catch a little bit of wind in your sail, the next thing you know, you're sailing like an Olympian. He's good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, what would be one last thing about Eckhart that most of us wouldn't have known, wouldn't have picked up on, or simply what has been a personal effect of just interacting with him that you still either shake your head about, you chuckle about? What's been fun or deep?
Well, there was something that was deep. So after he did this gig at the Albert Hall in 2019, I walked him back to the car that was waiting for him to take him to the hotel. And I suddenly saw that he was really tired, that he'd given his all and something had been used up. And I said to him, "Hey, Eckhart, you're really tired, aren't you?" And he said, he nodded. And I said, in that moment, I said to him, I can see that actually you're in service, because it feels like he's just, it's like Val Doonican sitting there in his cardigan spinning tales, but actually he's in service. He's creating an energy field. And I said, "You're in service." And he said, "Yes." And I knew I'd got it, that actually his ego's not in there sort of like playing the crowds. You know, when I do a big talk, it's like I feel quite uplifted because I feel like I'm getting all the attention of the crowds. He's just doing his thing in service. And another conversation I'd had with him, it was along the lines of when dying, and he said if he died, he'd be ready to go whenever he was. it's like he's not hanging on in there. He's open to where the universe is going to take him.
Wonderful. Okay, this is going to be a little, well, here, hold on. I'll do Thich Nhat Hanh next. And then I'll have a little fuzzy photo of Ram Dass. I still haven't gotten my favorite photo of him just yet, but I have a decent one that's pretty famous or well-known as a photo goes. Okay, Thich Nhat Hanh, available to everyone, unconditional love. His transition was probably like that. He was ready a long time ago. He chose inner calm as his little moniker at the bottom. But hear what you need to hear. If you want to close your eyes, Malcolm, I know you love listening with your eyes closed. You'll hear his voice. Oh, you're already closed. Hear his voice come in strongly. And if you want to feel a hand on your shoulder, a little squeeze, or on the flat of your back, whatever, shoulder blade area, and he'll have a reminder on that front, and you'll perhaps talk about that. And at home, if you want to close your eyes and you can get a flower smell from him, the rustling of tree leaves from him, something extremely peaceful, whether it's France, whether it's, I'm not going to get the country right, but probably Vietnam, and so on. He'll bring you even an image on your eyelids. If you're really open, loosey-goosey, and just don't care, and care a lot in your heart, you'll be all set. He'll bring you something beautiful. Allow, ask, and receive. Give yourself permission to let go. And if you don't mind, ask angels to make it nice, to help you stay in your heart. And Malcolm, what have you got for us?
I think with Thich Nhat Hanh, what I saw was the deep surrender of the man, the deep simplicity. Like his books, I would never pick up his book and work my way through it. I would often pick it up and just be touched by something very tender and very simple. And there was a sense of him walking. You know, I did a 5-day retreat with him once in Devon, and interestingly enough, there was a sense that he walked, almost floated, that there was something about him that was really didn't rest heavy on the earth. And it almost felt like, and it's very easy to sort of look at people as extraterrestrials, but if ever there was a man who actually was seen as a man, but actually was an extraterrestrial, I think he would come high in that reckoning. I also don't know if you know this, you probably do, but some of your listeners may not know, but he was nominated in 1966, I think it was, for the Nobel Peace Prize by Martin Luther King for his nonviolent resistance to the Americans in Vietnam. Mm-hmm. He brought the whole concept of nonviolence towards that horrendous war that took place in Vietnam.
Ooh. And what we'll do next is, I've got another photo for you. I'll just take 1 second. Oh, here we go. Okay. MLK.
Oh, yeah, that's great. Great.
And if folks at home want to put a hand out and just feel some love, excuse me. But you can hear his voice come clear through about love or unconditional love or being. And what are you getting from MLK, Malcolm?
I think you just named it, actually, Michael. It's like he's unbelievably loving, that actually he was a visionary. He was someone who was able to mobilize people in the cause of peace. And that we often see our great beings assassinated, or their lives are taken early from them, but their legacy lives on. And for me, his legacy lives on in such a big way. He still represents nobility, dignity, grace, and wisdom.
Okay, Ram Dass, a little out of focus, so forgive me, but you'll be able to hear his voice. If you want to close your eyes on this one, that's fine. Or directly, you'll be able to hear something from him through you to all of us. And if you want to feel a light wind or gust, but it's love, either on a Hawaiian breeze or on another type of breeze, you'll feel a little love around you if you wish. Just him saying hello.
Mm.
Good, good, good.
I think for me, Ram Dass embodies the sort of like the joy of the spirit. There was a real sense that it's almost like he was so delighted to be blessed with the life that he had and wanted to give everything he possibly could. And I remember something very deep that happened on one of his retreats that my then wife, my ex-wife now, but still a close friend, was pregnant with our son Michael, who I've just been with now, just before I came on the show. And he said, "May I?" and put his hand on her belly. And he went, "Oh, I know this soul." And I've always felt like my son Michael was blessed by his relationship with Ram Dass. And I remember saying to Jack Cornfield at one point, do you think Ram Dass really did?" And he said, "Of course, he wouldn't lie." So there was some sense that actually that we're all interconnected, and that actually he Ram Dass for me was one of the greatest teachers I've ever come across. I think he was so beautiful, so generous, bountiful, and again you've named humor with Eckhart Tolle, and also the Dalai Lama also giggles quite a lot. Ram Dass used to laugh quite a lot at things, and there's a sort of sense I think of the great teachers. I went to a satsang recently, and there was a strong, I won't name the person, but there was this teacher there, and for a while I thought, this is really great, but there was no humor.
Mm.
And actually, I think humor is an essential part, and Ram Dass carried humor, and he also carried an immense devotion to his teacher, to Maharaji, Neem Karoli Baba. He carried that immense devotion, and it's called Guru Kripa, which is the love of the Guru. And I always felt like he was honoring his guru in how he was.
There's someone on the circuit out there who's totally successful on a bunch of different fronts. So multifaceted, and again, at some of the institutes and so on, has made a name for herself or himself. And I had the opportunity to interact with them on a consistent level, but not about spirituality and stuff like that. But when I would sit with the person, it would be like sitting with a high school principal and you're in trouble. There was no spark that way. Amazing communicator, I'm sure amazing at what he or she did for others, but not the joy, not the carefree, not the spontaneous, not the guru, non-guru, guru thing. Just spin the twister wheel and go in any direction. But speaking of which, in another direction, Sri Shirdi Sai Baba, a colorized photo, the one from the early 1900s, 1910 or so, when he passed away, I think, or 1917. I just also got in trouble with a podcast host because I didn't say Sri Shirdi. I could have been referring to the one with the big hair from 30 years ago. Again, there's a Confucius way to do all this, which is if the mat's not straight, the teacher's not going to teach the class. And then there's just being and loving and letting go of details and getting on with it. Speaking of which, here's Sri Shirdi Sai Baba.
Yeah.
If you want to catch some incense from an Indian temple that's just imaginary or from the universe, but just 10 meters behind you, you can hear the music in the air if you wish, those metal instrument things that blow in the wind. And are you getting the incense okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yay.
Yeah.
But he's compassion, 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 tight with angels, tight with the universe, lots of fun. And he'll move in this photo for anybody who wants to let him wink, smile, eyebrow goes up. You get the idea. No limits is no limits. But what are you getting from Sai Baba?
I think it's like there's a oneness with the universe in Sai Baba. That's what I see there. And interestingly, I remember Ram Dass doing a presentation once where he showed photos of the great teachers, and not one of them had any resonance of not being utterly awake. I think Shirdi Sai Baba was one of the great awakened beings. I recently did an interview. Do you know Terence Stamp, the actor? So Terence Stamp was General Zog in Superman. He was in Far From the Madding Crowd. He was Billy Budd. He'd had some great acting roles back in the 70s and early 80s, a bit before your time, Michael. But there was a sense that he'd been very close friends with Krishnamurti, and he talked about Krishnamurti as an awakened being. And I see the same thing with Shirdi Sai Baba as an awakened being. Ram Dass also showed photos of what's his name? Another of the great. Oh, that's Terence Stamp.
He was in Wall Street too, I believe.
Oh, was he really? Wow. Wow.
The Wall Street with the Michael Douglas.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was the other venture capital player, if I got that right.
Oh, he could well be that. Yeah. But I did a lovely. I'll send you. I did a podcast with him recently, so it was a lovely interview with him. So it was really sweet. Um, but we were talking about awakened beings, and I would absolutely see that Shirdi Sai Baba was awake, and actually that's quite rare. There's plenty of people who can proclaim awakeness, but I think that the real those who've gone beyond and no longer living in their egos are very rare.
Well, with your permission, a few more pictures. I'll do an angel in just a second, but I have if there's the Divine Mother, there's the tiger that the Divine Mother rides on. And deity, action, action, action. It's this photo. It's a little dark on the wall, but you can, he's on everyone's team. So not a spirit guide, a little bigger than that. Not that it matters if it's big or little, but just a broader flow. And anyone who wants to hear the roar of a tiger in the air as if you're and the highest vibe of an Indian jungle coming your way. Again, only the highest vibe, love and above. But Malcolm, if you want to put your hand out into the open part of the room off to the left, like you own a giant dog, but yeah, off to the left, like you've got a giant dog 3 feet tall, you can feel the fur on your hand. A lot of folks have done this on the show and elsewhere. One woman from India actually felt the fur on her, soft tiger fur on the wrist. Usually people feel it on the hand. And one person got a lick on the cheek. You don't have to go through that unless you think it's cool. But what is the tiger? He's action, action, action. What's he have as a reminder for us all to be in our hearts?
I think again we're looking at presence. I think this is the great gift of a tiger is just embodies presence. He's not thinking about what he's going to do next. He's just power, action, beauty, divine grace, magical sort of synergy that's there.
Wonderful. Charlotte is an angel who's a teacher, your favorite from third form, fourth grade in the US. Mrs. Wilson or Mrs. Johansson, whoever didn't get you in trouble. She's got words that are just meant to help you expand. If you like ancient Egypt, catch an ancient Egyptian incense smell that you could never buy today or experience today. But that's Charlotte and Angel. But, they're from all over. There's a Dale who's from Andromeda, so maybe that helps broaden the definition a little. I always just say light beings are like whales, angels are like dolphins, but love is love. Who cares? And you're already feeling her vibe?
Yeah.
Yay. She is a great one to see as a human being. I've seen her in an Austin Starbucks. She was dressed in white Santa Fe, New Mexico garb, turquoise jewelry, drinking coffee, staring at me and my book editor. And I kept looking over and she was facing the wrong way and just sipping her coffee. And I asked the important questions over the last 12 years, not who killed Kennedy, but when angels are here, do they actually drink the coffee when they're in human form? The answer is yes. So I'll put that on paper today. What are you getting from Charlotte?
I think we've talked a lot about these great men and these qualities of the masculine. And what I'm getting from Charlotte is the quality of the feminine, of the compassion, of this tenderness, of the healing, of the sort of it's almost like the quiet teacher that's there. That's totally empathic and emotionally able and sound and can contain and hold in a very different way than a lot of these men we've talked about.
It's so funny that we've talked about so many men. I find this to be, and this is going to be me getting off path and not saying it the right way, but I find it to be mostly women. And a lot of the men on the mindfulness meditation front completely freak out at me later. And I know I happen to be in this body in this way today. So, but it's funny. We did have a lot of men in a row. So with that, I'm not going to get her name right. I've only gotten introduced to her in the last month. There's also a dozen ways to say her name, but this is an Indian saint, Anandamayi Ma.
Yes.
And so she is wonderful. If you want on this, you can go eyes open looking at the photo, feel the compassion. Folks at home can do this. Put your hand out, feel the vibe, catch flowers from India, something that's exotic that you're not used to. But anybody with a window in a tree, and even if you're watching this 2 years from now in 2026, look out and you can let her show up next to an angel, next to your Uncle Ralph, maybe to the angel and her first. It's whatever you'll allow for. But here's a gorgeous photo for her and her piece. Malcolm, if you want, when you're ready in a little bit and you catch a touch on the shoulder, you hear ready, or you hear the music, look to your left and out into the yard and just see her standing there if you wish. And she can give you that symbol Sanskrit, I don't know what it's called, something, oh, I don't know, I've lost all my words, something profound as a gift. And if anybody wants to breathe through their mouth extra, that's an extra form of turning up the volume a little and letting go.
Okay, well, I don't know what it means, but I felt like I got a sapphire from her. And so sapphire will have some sort of connection. But also it's that, again, it's that beautiful quality of the divine feminine, that actually she's not no longer having to play the game of being the sweet little woman, the sexy this or the anything else. She's just arrived in herself.
Mm.
And there's such beauty in that.
There's an angel next who's light waves of energy and water. A woman who's been doing this a long time, 18 or plus more books out, and very authentic. I loved meeting her. She immediately saw this photo and said, that's Mother Hawaii when she lived in Hawaii. And again, Pacific Princess, a little bit of Hawaii, a lot of Hawaiian spirituality now. Just Min is good enough, like Minnesota, Lakota Sioux word for water. This is my guardian angel, and a doctor. It doesn't matter if she's already taped or in the future, but that's her guardian angel as well as my guardian angel. I think every angel has like 20 to 30,000 humans at least that they're helping out, and they can juggle a lot of balls at once. So they could talk to 10 people at the same time, no big deal. Time and space is just more of a brain thing than it is a heart thing. But this is Min, or Minwala. Uwala is a Polynesian morning glory, sweet potato vine underneath, morning glory flowers. And Ua is rain in Hawaiian. La is sun, if I got that right. Rainbow. So her name's Water Rainbow, Water Morning Glory. Just call her Min if that's more comfortable for everybody. You can catch Hawaii as well, but she's very profound, loves the divine feminine, or just, we'll call it the universal flow of light. I don't think she probably uses those words necessarily, but. And what are you getting from her, Malcolm?
I'm getting a sort of sense of an ethereal flow that actually she's able to swim in the ethers. That's the feeling I have from her, that she's able to sort of tune in at a very broad, large level.
I'll do one more photo for you. It'll be a human photo of an actress from the 60s, but it doesn't matter. This is an angel named Isabel, Isabel, who's intercom. She's the pond that's a mirror, no stone has caused a ripple, or the ocean, and that once a month, 5 a.m., no wind, but it's glass or a mirror. A lot of intuitive, empathic folks feel her as like, think of a solar storm of love. You're going to be like, oh my God, I need a seatbelt. So if anybody at home is super intuitive, you can do the Formula One seatbelt. You can do the roller coaster seatbelt. Do something, because she'll move, smile more in a static photo that we know can't move. But ask if you need smoothing out on some front of your life, or just a little wind in your sails. This is Isabel. And let the photo come alive a little extra so the smile goes bigger or the sparkles get bigger in her eyes. And for folks at home, feel what you feel what you can feel, do not judge. And what does she have for a reminder for us all, Malcolm?
I think she actually carries the physical beauty in a way that is actually quite rare again, that actually there's a sense of openness that goes with that beauty. So I think that this is a beautiful soul inhabiting a beautiful body, and actually being able to sort of not be in your face with it, but just to embody something of the exquisiteness of the potential of humanity.
Okay, so getting back to basics for folks and getting back to your book, again, you had 10 suggestions for slaying your dragons with compassion. We're going to have you talk about one of those practices, but people need to get the book and check it out. I'll do one quote to just buy time. And this is from angels. And I think this is the holy hand grenade. This is the thing that challenges us, shows us our ego, our limits, where we're putting our poker chips stacked in front of us arbitrarily, really tall stack of 10s, small stack of 5s, and a big stack of whatever to make the metaphor messed up. But love more and allow more. You can be happy now in this very moment, without a single reason. Boy, wouldn't that be nice, and watch the end of conflict globally, or not liking your coworker, your neighbor, or yourself, or a relative. You can be happy now in this very moment without a single reason. What do we do with that?
We live it. What else can we do with it? And actually, it's like all our little worries. Often, we can look 10 years down the track and think we had sleepless nights about something, and it's irrelevant now. There's something about recognizing that actually it's our divine birthright to carry joy, to actually to enjoy this paradise we've been born into, even though these horrendous things are happening around us. There is also a sense that we've been given this wonderful planet to live on for a short period of time before we merge back into the divine consciousness. So there is something for me about actually sort of practicing joy.
And I'm born in 1968, 56 now, as of February. And I keep chuckling because it does go by really fast. I'm a runner for 42 years, and it's not that I feel it's futile in any way. I love engaging folks, but there's a lot of seriousness out there. There's a lot of seriousness in the spirituality, the self-help, the other type of realms as well. I mean, there's a million of these little industries everywhere, whether it's sports and so on. And there's a lot of beauty and a ton of potential. I mean, unlimited growth and opportunity for us all. With that, I'll read one more quote, and I'll let you wrap it up with this unlimited potential for growth here. All of life is growth and expansion. You could still be a 50 New York Times bestseller, 50 books, and be Eckhart Tolle or a parallel in the whatever industry, the steel industry, who knows, or finance. But there's still room for growth and expansion. It's unlimited. It's crazy. So here's the quote. And this is a little thing, but the little things I think are big. Sometimes the person next to you or a stranger just needs validation via love and compassion. A smile changes any moment. So too does laughter or a few kind words. Be compassionate to all. Do it. From an angel named Dale and from angels in general. What can you wrap up with on this whole life is about growth, and we get stuck up here? Also, it's the little things. Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a harder battle than you, Plato.
I think there's a quote that comes to me from Thomas Hübl, who I mentioned earlier, and he said, "The obstacles on the path are the path."
Mm.
And I think that we are given our life circumstances, and we learn to dance with those circumstances, no matter what our judgment is of how they are. We learn to do our unique dance, bring our unique gift to planet Earth.
My problem is, my drama is, my situation is, you don't understand my situation. I have 19 kids, 14 cats, and 13 dogs. Is rarely turned into, hey, this is my opportunity for growth. What can I do next from here?
Yeah.
To get moving, or just to slow down more. I will do one more photo. Plato, old man's face. You can see it. He doesn't mind me saying that, but there, let me do it here. You can see his face. No hugs for him. They're sweaty, but he is so crystal clear about life and the life stages involved and where people are at. I'll bring it a little closer. Can you see the old man's face?
Yep.
Okay. What does Plato have for us as a very clear reminder? His insights are fun.
I think there's a sense again. I'm reminded of being slow, of actually that there's a great wisdom, and that wisdom has been born. It's his gift to bring through, and so he does bring that through, and he's stood the test of time.
Mm.
So there's a sort of sense that that wisdom is timeless, and it's timeless because his ego's not in the way, trying to say I'm the great I am.
Well, I did blow sage earlier in the show, didn't I?
You did.
Okay, good. I'm making sure. I skipped one show where I enjoyed the fellow so much, and doesn't use the word intuitive at all. He's in a different industry. It's not his focus, but he was more intuitive than half the intuitive folks that I meet. Not that we're not all intuitive, which was your message at the beginning. So, Malcolm, I've got to thank you. This has been a very timeless, fun. I've been feeling it the whole time. And it's just been a wonderful interview. So thank you very much for being on Angels, Positivity, and Love.
Thank you very much, Michael. It's been lovely being with you, and really appreciate it.
Well, best to you this summer, and hopefully we'll have you back in 2025. Take care.
See you. God bless.